Oh, people are saying hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Hola, says Holly. Hola.
¿Cómo estás? Hi.
Carrie, hello, Carrie. Who else is here? Daniel's here. Jackie's here. Joanne's here. Oh, Andrew's here. Oh, they're all the fun people. Oh, this is good. Holly says, yeah. I mean, that three-letter word is, I mean, that's pretty good. That'll get you pretty far in Spain, I think. Now I'm paranoid about this Chablis that you made. You've put this idea in my head that there's a spider at the end of the bottle, at the bottom of the bottle.
It's just a little mug, you know? It's all the best wineries have it in there.
Oh, well,
Straight
out of
from
my
the
mind.
farm.
We're not here to talk about Chablis. We did that months ago, 6 months ago.
You
This
can
is
drink.
actually wine coach number 30, Brad.
Oh, congratulations. Salud.
I did 30. I did 30, 30 hours of wine coach before I thought to invite you to come to one.
Yeah,
So
that seems
cheers.
appropriate. It's like you warmed it up for me, basically.
I mean, to my credit, we have been discussing doing a Spanish one since like February. So we just never really got around to it. And we were waiting for the Envenate wines to arrive, and we had high hopes to do some fun Spanish tastings. But, you know, things happen. Wine gets delayed, but we're here to drink some other wines. So that we're all excited for that. Everyone's.
I mean, I know people are beating down the door to drink Spanish wine these days.
Hell yeah. I mean, this is what it's all about. I definitely came into summer not wanting to drink Spanish wines and whites anyway, not thinking that. And I'm tasting these beauties. I was like, oh, I should be doing this more often. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wine Coach at Home. I'm Nick, your friendly sommelier. We are here to drink some wines tonight, some Spanish wines. But as always, I can't do it alone. Today, I've asked my dear friend Bradley Hall to come and join us. Brad, how are you? Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm pretty great, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Good. Had a day off today, which means I got to have a nap and watch
Yeah,
YouTube all day. So
that's nice.
living the dream. But Brad has come to many and witnessed many other wine coaches, usually from off camera on the side. So we're excited to have
Yeah.
you on camera this time.
Often just my hand appearing on camera for
Yeah,
whatever.
I know. I do remember that sometimes. And unfortunately, Krista, your partner, lovely Krista, is working tonight, so she couldn't be on the sidelines, like at this off camera on the couch with you.
I know it doesn't seem right, but I guess someone has to serve those tables.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the wine will not pour itself. If I've learned anything over this reopening, that you need people to pour wine. But we're here to talk about Spain. So, um, I guess everyone wants to know. I mean, curious minds will want to know why did I invite Bradley along? Well, Bradley is the rep of Cochesa Imports. Wait, did I say that right? Cochesa Imports?
Uh,
Yeah.
Kosei, yeah.
Yeah. And they're the wine agency that brought all these wines in. And I thought you would be the perfect person both to talk about these wines because you know the wines much more intimately than me, but you've always had this really great affinity towards Spanish wines and like cool, interesting Spanish wines. And you were always going to be the first choice, regardless of whether I was, what wines I was pouring. So, yeah, maybe tell us why you love Spanish wine so much.
I do indeed love Spanish wine. I mean, I think I was just saying we were chatting briefly, but maybe it's just I love an underdog. I don't know what it is, but Spain is the definitely one of the greatest winemaking places in the world that is also the most kind of neglected and misunderstood, at least definitely by us in Ontario. I mean, we've always had kind of a strange market and a very strange relationship to wine here, but I most people, I don't know what people's entry point to like Spanish wine is that like live here and grew up here. But if it's from the LCBO shelves, it's probably not much of a starting point. There's so much going on in Spain, and like so many places in the world, it's really just kind of taken off, especially lately. There's so much ingenuity and new ideas and winemaking technique and passion and just kind of rediscovery of tradition and terroir happening there. So there's a crazy amount of good wine available, and it's less expensive, and it's interesting, and it's delicious.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely, I mean, remember a few years ago, you know, I mean, I guess over the last few years, as I've gone to your tastings and I've done like tasted other Spanish wines, each year I was more surprised by the wines that I was seeing, both in terms of style and in terms of like just this breadth, but also, yeah, just a very, you know, like a surprise to like what we are taught educationally about Spanish wines. You know, Spain is competes with Italy in terms of production of globally about of in terms of wine. It's consistently one of the largest, like the biggest producer of wine in the world. But can we name 10 Spanish white grapes, or do we does it's a bit more, it feels a little bit more homogenous, and it feels like it's Rioja and Sherry, and it's kind of where the big region sort of ends, and you kind of have to make that effort to scratch the surface and go, oh, this is a huge country. There's so many different styles, and thankfully, the natural wine movement has really brought about this like curiosity about small producers and small regions with unusual grapes that no one's ever heard of. And I think that's really helped ignite this new fire about Spanish wines and taste some really great wines that some we're tasting today are like, really modern. Some are really everyday wines. Some are reinterpretations of like older styles that they're trying to reinvent. So it's not just like, you know, fresh-faced winemakers just going around. They do exist, but there is a lot of breadth, and I don't know. I find them super interesting. So I'm super excited to taste, but can't talk about wine without putting it in your glass. So let's start with wine number one. Uh, oh, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, I remember you describing this wine as like what they drink in Barcelona in like bistros. I
Yeah,
mean, the label is beautiful.
I
Uh,
mean, I love the bottle as well. It's a bit of a weird kind of like green Riesling bottle, but this is a winery that is 15 kilometers outside of the center of Barcelona. And it's as if almost you just kind of like went to Scarborough and there was like a super old school traditional wine region there. So a lot of what they make gets consumed in Barcelona for sure. And these are definitely, I would say, especially this wine, very conducive to the Barcelona lifestyle of kind of walking around and standing up and eating and snacking and drinking little glasses of something delicious and refreshing.
I've never been to Barcelona, so but if this wine is anything to go by, I want the Barcelona lifestyle. I mean, it is a bit Barcelona. I don't know. It's very hot and humid. I don't know how humid Barcelona is, but it feels like it's a hot and humid place.
I mean, best time to go is probably not the summer because it's very hot and it's very touristy, but like go in the fall. It's fantastic. And I mean, if, I'm sure so many people have been there, but for everyone like us, if you want to just like spend your day snacking and drinking, it's definitely one of the right places to be. There's no shortage of that.
I really like this wine, how there's a lot on the mid palate. Like it has this, it's not all acid, and it has this like really rich like mid palate of of like apples and sort of spice and the beautiful kind of like earthy, summery kind of flavors. And it always has that kind of weight to it, which I think, both suit what you suggest, right? Like it's going to go well with great, like delicious snacks and food. It's a food wine. It's both easy drinking in terms of it's dry, it's nice freshness, but also it's has a little weight and complexity to it. It's super fun.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we were kind of chatting briefly about the fact that Spain, it can be a hard country to know wine wise because there's so many wine regions. They're all very separate. They're really like spread out through Spain.
I'll
And
put it
this,
on the map. I'll put it on the screen.
but this is like definitely a Mediterranean wine in every way. It's very like fresh. I mean, you can literally taste that little salty hint of sea breeze at the end. But like you were saying, I mean, the grape for this is Xarel-lo, and definitely one of kind of my favorite white grapes of all time. But yeah, something it can do really well is like super, super powerful acidity, but also body texture, and that salty minerality is like really key and classic. And that, I mean, yeah, if you're thinking about eating like ham, olives, tapas, cheeses, like this is going to be perfect, basically.
Yeah, I kind of talk about this sometimes when I'm talking about Lambrusco and like drinking Lambrusco. Like Lambrusco is from the like this region in Italy, Emilia Romagna, that has these salty, strong foods, and you need a very specific wine that um, that both suits the wine, like suits the food, and is able to handle those really strong umami, salty kind of character, but also have the same tone that prosciutto isn't. You don't have like a steak of prosciutto for dinner. It's not like it is a snack kind of nibbly kind of food. It's not necessarily something you like you you eat as seriously as you would a steak or something like that. So you kind of need it has to serve a purpose of being able to suit those kinds of foods, but also the occasion in which you eat those foods, which is, sitting on a patio or drinking it. I don't know I'm curious just to see what people think of this wine. I think my glass is the wrong style of glass. I'm going to get a new glass. It's terrible.
Yeah, what does everyone think of this wine? What is everyone's entry point into Spanish white wine? I guess I'm curious as well if anyone wants to jump in the comments, but what kind of...
Never forget the power of market research, friends. This is a very good, this is always the angle how I reel people in.
This is, I mean, this is such a cava region as well. And definitely cava is being produced where this wine comes from, but Xarel-lo is probably the standout grape from cava production that is really being pushed by winemakers, dedicated winemakers, to like use as a still white to prove that it's, one of the great white grapes of the world for sure. And there are a lot of good examples of that. But I think this wine really kind of shows some of that potential, like just the weight, the texture, the acidity, everything. Yeah.
And it kind of does remind me a little of cava, like a flat cava. Like it's got the same fruit profile. Obviously, Xarel-lo is a main grape in it. I think one of the first ones you ever sold me was the hard-ass Xarel-lo.
Yeah. For anyone who's ever had that, that's one of my favorite white wines of all time. But exactly, yeah.
I think I've still got a bottle in the cellar. We'll pull it out one day.
I mean, that's a wine. Recently opened up like a '09 vintage of the Pardes Xarel-lo, and it's fantastic. Like it can, all that acidity, it can really age.
Yeah, and like this one's $32. Like this is for what it is. It's a really great price, and it's amazing quality, and it's kind of a beautiful bottle. Like I don't know, there's often, you can get fancy kooky bottles, but there's something very elegant about this bottle that sort of has personality, and it's right up my alley. So I'm really glad
I
Every time I open this one, I'm like, oh yeah, this is such a delicious thing.
I
Mm.
definitely associate that bottle with the feeling of drinking wine on like a patio or just like relaxing or doing something very informal and fun.
Really cool. Um, okay, wine number two. So we're still in Catalonia, aren't we? Correct. With wine number two.
Really like the comment about it being the Oakville of Barcelona. It's really funny.
So wine number two, Blanc del Terra, Terre. Um, I think you once told me this is one of your favorite wines.
This is definitely one of my favorites that we've kind of discovered and brought into the portfolio in the last year or two. I'm just kind of in love with it. I mean, this is very much similar region. This is Mediterranean, just south of Barcelona, and this is a Macabeo. So this is again one of the grapes famous from cava production, but being pushed to sort of stand out on its own as a still wine. I'm really curious to see what everyone thinks of this. Mm.
I mean, it's $34, which goes a long way. And it's 13.5% alcohol. Like these are perfect summer wines. I don't think you could get a perfect summer wine out of this. Oh yeah, that nose, that's crazy.
It's really like a beautiful nose. Like it really is kind of jumping out with a lot of say like ripe orchard fruit, and definitely there's a beautiful like lime blossom, lemon
Like
lime.
lime, like when you squeeze the zest and the oils come out, like it hits you that like with that intensity. You get this big hit that goes right up your nose. Oh, what a wonderful wine.
And I love like kind of as you were saying, there's a real richness to this wine. I mean, it's not done in barrels or anything. It definitely probably has been on its lees for a while, but just that, yeah, that texture, that sort of like weight on the palate, and that feeling of um, I don't know, almost like peach nectar, apple nectar, something like that is really refreshing and exciting.
Yeah, it's easy to think that these Spanish wines, because they're from, Catalonia, they're mostly used in cava, and painting them with the same brush, and that they kind of have the same flavor profile. But tasting them side by side, you see this like such a different shape to the wine. This is like all at the front, and it sort of falls off really quickly into this like chalky minerality,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the Trello kind of went small, big, and then kind of trailed off again. And you can see how they would complement each other in a blend, and how those flavor profiles would sort of come to the forefront at different times. Um, and again, $34, like wines didn't taste this good. Like it's like if you were spending $30 on a Pinot Grigio from Italy, like that has the same kind of occasion and sense of occasion to it. Like you would not be getting this level of quality and flavor and intensity and winemaking. I guess winemaking is a key.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely biased, but one of the nicest things about Spanish wine, especially right now in our market, is just the value. Like it's more likely and easier to get great wine for a cheaper price, you know?
Yeah, this one's much more textural and has a much like a little bitterness on the end, which I kind of like. It has this like texture element to it, like it's more of a sensation. Yeah, I'm gonna keep drinking it. It's
Yeah.
delicious. And yeah, we went with we definitely touched upon this sort of thing when we were talking about Greek wines. That sometimes we equate. It's very easy to equate price or value with quality. But when you look at Greece, you look at Spain, you you definitely, you definitely, the coin, it isn't weighted all the same as it would be with French and Italian wines, whose industries and commercialism is much more established. And you might, very likely that you will get a very good wine for very little money, and you should just enjoy it while it can. You can still find a bargain in the wine world. I mean, I feel like everyone knows this, but I mean, it's always nice to have a reminder that, you know, when you get surrounded by expensive wines and burgundies and champagnes, you know, you sometimes think the best way to have a really good glass of wine is to spend a lot of money, but sometimes you just have to not force yourself not to. Oh, such a wonderful.
I mean, yeah, maybe it's just the way I like to eat and drink or whatever, but I always hope that there's room to have wine be a grocery as well as a luxury. I mean, I'm sure we've all spent, a lot of our time and money on nice restaurants and really nice bottles and stuff. But of course, there has to be that place for something that is accessible that you can have that's amazing that you can like open on a weeknight.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? Normally, a year ago, if you went to the LCBO and you said Spanish whites, they'd just point you to a section. They wouldn't talk you through that section. And thankfully, we tried at Peter Pan. There's obviously other great wine shops around the city, Grape Witches, Midfield, Archive. They're all doing some really great things. And that's the beauty of this sort of era of wine drinking in Toronto is that, you can now afford to ask cool questions about wines. Because there's definitely regions like I don't know a lot about. And I love the idea of going to a wine shop and having a conversation, the same way people come to me to talk about Austrian wine. I want to be able to go to other wine shops and talk about Spanish wine or Greek wine. I mean, Greek wine, oh yeah. I could spend all day in the Greek wine shop.
Yeah.
This is so good. It also has this like waxy kind of thing going on. I'm not mad at that either, like honey, like honeycomb.
Yeah,
Kind
I
of
would say
flavor.
there is a definite, it's not, I mean, it's definitely a dry wine, but there's a real kind of perception of this like thick, honeyed, nectary quality to it. Like,
Yeah, I like the nectar quality. It does have like a peach kind of nectar vibe that you would get. Yeah, delicious. Also, 2018, the years are creeping up on us. And I remember when 2019 was the most like, was a young vintage, but now we're at like 3 years. Like for white wine, that's majority of white wine it's definitely consumed within 2 years of being open. So this is kind of getting into its middle age a little bit. But ah, every time again, and the same with the other wine, the first wine, every time I open this, I hear that your voice in my head saying, this is my favorite wine. And when I drink it, and I'm like, yep, amazing. Very, very good.
I mean, I
Um,
really, sometimes we talk about minerality in white wine and it can be a weird conversation. But even though this doesn't have like the hugest acidity or it's not like so bright and fresh and clean, it really has a really like interesting, beautiful minerality. Like you were saying, it kind of finishes on this like chalky spectrum. And I do think, it's like right by the sea. It's like very like fossil heavy limestone soils. And you do get this kind of like beautiful powdered texture just like spreading over your palate that is, I mean, I don't know, it's really nice. It's not that easy to find such like nice minerality.
yeah, this is like, if there's one takeaway from this, and if you're really intrigued to drink some Spanish whites, if you like these two, like stick to Catalonia, like go, look for those like Catalonia, Barcelona, all these like key words to find these wines. Like, there's Trello and Macabeo. I mean, and there is a handful of other grape varietals that you can grow in that region, and there is a lot of old vineyards. The rediscovery of Spain and this kind of this renaissance of Spanish wines come at the same time of like this embrace of old varietals of old vineyards, and a lot of these winemakers are finding really old vineyards, and if it's 70-year-old Macabeo, then that's what you're making because you, you can't, you can, obviously you can plant any vine you want, but you can't get a plant a 70-year-old vine, you have two generations worth of people, right? So, that's kind of where you may never be out of your comfort zone in terms of varietals and varietals that you recognize, but just have some fun with it. You know, you will never, it'll never be what you expect, but it'll always be delightful, I think.
Yeah, I mean
Do you have much?
what's that? The EU has been paying people in Europe to rip up old vines since the 90s, but fortunately, and definitely happening in Spain and everywhere, but fortunately, Spain, a lot of people, as you say, are really sort of rediscovering these vineyards that just have never not been there, and terroirs as well.
I mean, Monsanto's a Priorat's a great example. Like prior to the early 80s, it was an abandoned kind of region that these overgrown like vines had just been overgrown, and I don't think there's no other region in the modern world that sort of shot to fame so quickly than Priorat, and that was the philosophy. They discovered these grapes. A group of winemakers went there, made some wines, and the world was like, you know, and if it can happen, 100 kilometers down the road in Priorat, why can't it happen, in Aliaga or Cataluna? Catalunya, it's going to be great. Mm, delicious. Okay, well, we're leaving Catalunya, everyone. I really apologize. I wish we could keep drinking Catalonian wine, but we're going to the other side, Galicia. We're going to I'm going to share the map again. We're going to Rias Baixas. Did I say that right this time? I'm really bad at it.
Rias Baixas, yeah. I mean,
Rias Baixas.
this is such a nice collection of wine that you've put together as well, because we are kind of really jumping all over Spain, which is great because white wine is made in so many different places in Spain.
So this is Albarino. Okay, to correct your prior statement, I didn't put these wines together. You literally in April sat me down and we tasted these wines, and these are the four wines that I fell in love with. So you showed me these wines, and you know, unfortunately, no one was buying them, and I was like, I know these wines are really great, and I want everyone to buy them. So I was like, let's do a wine coach, and hopefully give myself like have. But sometimes for me, having a conversation about these wines and hearing a conversation about these wines makes it a little bit more prominent in my mind to remind me to sell these more often because these are super special. So Albarino is the grape. I love this wine. Albemarle is the producer, one of the sort of greats of the region. Um, Albarino is kind of the more classic. It is the classic white varietal of Spain and the white wine of Spain. It's in the textbooks. It's what we study. We don't we kind of really maybe white Rioja, but it's really Albarino is kind of the only classical white wine of Spain. But I mean, rightly so. But it is a beautiful wine. But it is kind of, I don't know. It suffers from being not like being the only wine people talk about, and it's from a really small region in a very unique part of Spain called Green Spain, that is cool and windy and foggy and very green because of the the because of the winds, and probably has a lot of shared traditions with Ireland and Scotland. It's a very strange
Yeah.
place. I mean, all Spain is a very strange place culturally, very diverse place culturally. So, I don't necessarily. I think Albarino is great. I think it's had to bear the weight of Spanish white wine for a long time, and I'm glad we get to share a delicious example. But I'm glad that we only needed to taste one because there's 1,000 other whites that we could taste. Oh, so good.
Well, I mean, as you say, Albarino, definitely recognizable. And if you've been into like the LCBO to look at white wines, it's for sure on the shelf. I mean, it's again, it's one of these wines that's gets pushed in a more sort of marketed and industrial way as a pretty like maybe like neutral, kind of high toned, fresh white, which it definitely can be, but it is nice to taste this one, which is completely not that, as
Oh
a
no.
counterbalance, let's say. And this is for sure just another like favorite white from Spain for me. Like this wine in particular, the pie is amazing, very special. And I mean, certainly to that point, I mean, most people are pushing their Albarino to be as kind of neutral as possible. I think, like very quick pressing and into stainless steel and get it on the market pretty young and fresh. But this is definitely at least
Okay.
part of it gone through malolactic fermentation. At least part of it has been in barrels and gives you something completely different.
And the color is amazing. Uh, and yeah, to reiterate Brad's point, it is the global market has driven it towards dry, fresh, mineral, neutral. And even I was today watching a video about like uh, watching a YouTube video about Albarino, and it was, most times this grape is it's fermented and then it's aged in stainless steel for 2 to 9 months and then put in a bottle and drunk. So this isn't that wine. This isn't this. This is why I gravitated towards this wine was because it didn't drink like a normal Albarino. It was a different direction of winemaking, and I love it so much. Um, and I think that bit of barrel aging, a little bit of like oxidation in the aging process has helped broaden it and like the color. Oh, this color. I haven't even tasted it. And I'm already in love with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I was just up at a friend's cottage and someone brought an enormous bag of fuzzy peaches. And I'm really like put back there by this wine because it really gives you that hit of something like rich, sweet, again, something very peachy, like ripe orchard fruit. But that acidity at the end is just like scaling a cliff or, it just like really comes on fast. And I love that, yeah, despite the sort of richness and as you say, the extra oxygen and the sort of texture of this wine, that acidity isn't going anywhere. It's like screaming. It's amazing.
It just kind of rounds the edges when you first have it. It kind of this like the acid profile is a little rounded, a little bit more easier to go, and then the acidity just like skyrockets at the end. And for those who are not super familiar with Albarino, it kind of falls in the category of Riesling and Grüne Veltliner of being like very high acid, elevated like aromatics, but with often with like a bitter. They call it phenolic bitterness. It has this kind of like bitterness on the palate. Um, that's I think, a very naive definition of it. I think they always it's kind of falls in this neutral white wine camp, and I don't really think that's the right definition of this wine this region and this grape. But so good. Ah, there's so much power there, and like with that amount of acidity, like old Albarino, I could only imagine how delicious this wine would be on age.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really unique place. As you said, it's Celtic Spain in so many ways. And, for people who like Atlantic wines from sort of all different countries, this is definitely that. Like for this winery, especially, the vines are pretty much planted on the beach right at the ocean. And you can get that sea breeze and that salinity pretty easily from this wine as well, and that sort of Atlantic kind of cool freshness.
Yeah, I mean this is sort of mid tier, right? It's at $52, but I think like this is one of the best examples of Albarino right now on our market. So you're not having to go much further than sort of between $50 and $60 to get some of the best examples. The problem is that these kinds of examples are so few, like so rare on our market. Mostly what we see in Ontario is that clean, dry, mineral, neutral sort of Albarino that doesn't have the charm that this wine has. And like, you know, it's pretty special. I really like it. Yeah, I like Granny Smith. The Granny Smith kind of note to that green acidity. Like Granny Smith is a very acidic apple.
Yeah, I love that for sure. Yeah,
But what is pie? What does pie refer to?
pi means dad, basically. So this is like a lot of projects in different regions and definitely in Spain. This started as just like small family vineyards, part of just the crops that they grew, amongst other things, to create food for themselves. And they actually, this family had like a small restaurant basically on the beach as well. And then the son, Jercho, studied winemaking and basically came back and said, we have something really special, so let's sort of offer it to the world. But this is a tribute to his dad, who was the caretaker of the grapes before him.
Yeah. And this kind of like old oak, old neutral wood aging of Albarino is again another really rare technique. It's like it probably represents such a small percentage of Albarino that we find. So, and also for those who are curious, Alvarinho, which is the Portuguese kind of name for Albarino, also grown because if we remember, this region is right on the Portuguese border. So, I haven't drunk a lot of Alvarinho, but I think you kind of will get a very similar expression, and Portuguese wine's kind of cool as well right now. So, there's lots to go on. Kind of going really fast, friends. I apologize. Oh my god. Okay. Ube. Is it ube? Or is this ube?
I would say ube. Yeah, for sure.
Who knows? So, code of 45. 45 refers to the sea level that this winemaker believes that this soil is at its best. Mm-hmm. That's what I learnt. Brad, tell me about this wine, because there's so much I have to talk about that I feel like I'm just going to not be coherent to our lovely audience. But tell me everything about wine number 4, because I love this wine so much.
Yeah,
it's the best wine I've had all year, like white wine I've had this year.
So this is again jumping geographically in a huge way. We're going all the way south to the very tip of Spain, to Jerez, to Sherry region, to Cadiz, if anyone's ever been all the way down there. And I don't know kind of where people are at with sherry these days. I don't know if it's like a nerd's beverage or it's cool again, or I don't know what's happening. But definitely if you're inclined towards sherry, or if you're sherry curious or sherry adjacent, this is probably going to be the perfect wine. So it's an ultra hot region with a long tradition. Again, a tradition that has become pretty industrialized in the last 200 years. So this is a native boy, Ramon Ibanez, who kind of took a look around and said, like, we have one of the greatest wine terroirs with some of the most history in the world. We can make wine that doesn't have to follow this sort of like industrial model. And that's what he's doing. So it's single vineyard wines that are not fortified as sherry usually is, but go into barrels and are aged a little bit under floor, which is a really like unique and fascinating process where they age the wine with live yeast cells, and then bottled for vintage. So you really get a sort of sense of the vineyard, the terroir, and the different influences between ocean and sun and the different directions of the wind in particular, if you really want to get nerdy. But it's a fantastic wine. So you get some of the qualities of sherry and some of the qualities of the grape, and it's perfect, I would say.
It's the perfect wine. The grape variety is Palomino, which is usually the main grape that they use to make sherry out of. And I think, again, incorrectly defined by the English in all their wine textbooks as being a fairly neutral, flavorless, like insipid wine. only worthy of being fortified and having great things done to it in order to create something great out of it. And I think the winemaker here has had kind of researched and knows enough about this region's history to go, well, this is the style before fortification became a thing, before the English started drinking all the sherry and making like that this huge machine. This is how we drank wine. This is how we made wine before sherry and fortification became kind of the hallmark of the region. And trying to create a bit more of a snapshot into the past, and doing so beautifully. Like it is very reminiscent of that oxidative, nutty caramel notes is very reminiscent of cherry, obviously. Um, but it's a beautiful, dry table wine that is 12% alcohol. Like it's crazy low alcohol for a very hot, warm region. And it's spectacular.
Yeah, this I mean he has some different bottlings from different vineyards, and these vineyards are actually very like traditional and been known in this region and been named for a long time, but this particular one, the Miraflores, is a bit closer to the Atlantic Ocean. And therefore, you get a little bit of that cooler, fresh breeze coming in off the ocean. And it just gives it a little bit of a lighter character, a little more delicate, a little bit more of that sea breeze and fresh yeast and sea salt character than some of the other wines. And that's really nice.
Yeah, there's also this like fennel dill kind of quality to it. This like aromatics that really pierces, and it's not necessarily from the oxidation. Like it's not that oxidative kind of acetone thing. It's a little bit fresher. But I really appreciate just how many layers of flavor there is upon this wine. Like you've got that salty minerality, you've got this herbal quality that you kind of we again saw in definitely saw in this and we saw in this as well, but also that oxidative kind of just this perfect expression of control of this kind of winemaking, which is, fairly difficult to control floor, to like create it, develop these flavors without it not going wrong, but not happening at all. So um, I remember I don't know if I have it here, but the Noble Rot, the two men who run Noble Rot, one of, I guess, probably some of the best wine people in the world, the modern young wine people in the world. This was on their list of like favorite wines that they love to drink. And you see their list, it's like Bordeaux's and Burgundies and weirdly down the bottom is this wine. And when I saw it, I was like squealed because I was like, this wine is truly great, and it was so nice that it's not that just weird nerdy part in your brain that's like just is fanatical for the weirdest, most interesting wines that not necessarily drink well, but to have that kind of validation to say, oh, great, I wasn't imagining it. This wine is really, really marvelous. Oh, so good. And it's all gone. It's all sold out. Bad luck, everyone. No. I have some bottles left that when we open Peter Pantry properly, I'm going to pour it by the glass and just go to town. But I hope everyone really likes this wine because it's so good.
Yeah, I'm very curious. I mean, sound off in the comments if you're a sherry head or a sherry nerd or hate sherry or only had bad experiences or never have tried it, or I don't know what. I mean, it's a kind of a weird, fussy relic of a beverage maybe at this point, but I mean, obviously, like anything else, it's like you have a well-made wine from this place, a thoughtful example, or someone who's passionate about what they're doing, and you quickly understand why this region has over 2,000 years of history of winemaking. Like it's a truly sort of like special and legendary terroir, and for good reason.
I can only imagine what will happen in like what this wine would be in bottle for like 5, 10 years. Just you, when you have so much like so much flavor that isn't necessarily fruit. It's not. like fruit will fade and that fruit will begin to fade as it ages. But like there's so many non-fruit characters to this wine that I'm so curious as to see what it is. But like again, another really great example of modern, you know, modern Spanish winemaking where it isn't just doing what everyone else does. It's like understanding the history of a region and your history in it and recreating it. I don't think I have more respect for a winemaker who can kind of interpret history in a glass the way this wine has. It's truly marvelous. I want to try all of their other ones. It's delicious.
It's a really interesting connection. I mean, it's not just in Spain, it's all over the world, and especially places in Europe that have like a long tradition. But it's really amazing to see people as we sort of come out of the Parker age of wine or whatever that was that dominated like the 90s and the sort of like first global trade sort of breaking into like all the new world markets. But people like really like taking a look at what the region is that they're in and what it can do and taking sort of a thoughtful step back to make something really interesting. And I love to see people sort of reviving traditions or stepping away from the sort of like marketed version of their wines to make something that they think is worth drinking, worth making.
Yeah, and like, you know, we can often talk about how like, you know, Robert Parker and those wine magazines have, you know, created this weird globalization of wine, and it kind of pushes winemakers to only make wines that suit a very specific opinion. But at the same time, the flip side of that is that wine being so accessible and the movement of wine being so easy as it's ever been, it means that a winemaker like this can afford to make 200, 300 cases to know that there are 300 wine bars around the world who you know are dedicated to natural cool wines, to know that you know there are enough people in the world who want to drink that wine that they don't have to make wine with mass appeal. You can also swing the other way and make really niche and interesting wines, knowing that there are sommeliers and wine buyers who there's enough of them around the world, in Tokyo, Japan, Copenhagen, London, Paris, like Barcelona. All of these countries, like all of these amazing cities, have these like that are also centers of like natural wine, and it allows small winemakers to do something really interesting and not worry that you know the Tesco isn't going to buy it up, and you know how that they can enough people out there. And I think that's a really cool aspect of like globalization. You know, and the internet helps obviously, but we can't taste wine through the internet. We can share wine through the internet, but the day that the internet allows like puts a little straw out and I can suck up some wine, it's going to be a marvelous day. I'm looking forward to it.
Taste the vision.
Yeah, like a replicator. I just want a replicator. That's what I want. Star Trek to like replicate like you know 1945 DRC Romani Conti, something fancy like that. Okay. So I mean, we've tasted four wines, Brad. Are there, like, in your knowledge of Spanish wines or your passion for Spanish wines, are there other regions, other things, places people should be looking for, asking about? I don't know. I'm just trying to pull up the map. There's so much.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, white wine and Spain are have a sometimes maybe like a bit more of a distant relationship. Obviously, like so much of the push when Spain sort of entered the global market was towards those big Parker wines. So that kind of dominated all the money and the effort that went into it. But there is some incredible stuff. I would personally always look to Rueda, which again has a pretty like industrial reputation, and you really have to like pick through to find interesting wines. But they do have Verdejo vines that are not affected by phylloxera, and they have vineyards that are over 200 years old, and they have people who are doing really incredible things with those wines. And those have been certainly some of my favorite Spanish whites. If you can find something really interesting or really good, I would say like Barco del Corneta in particular. And then for something really like fresh and fun, I would always go to Chacali from Basque Country, which is, I think we're starting to see a little bit more and more here. You could probably find it in some nice bottle shops. And it's like fresh, delicious, refreshing, light on the palate, and really fantastic. So that would be good, I think.
Bierzo has beautiful Godeo.
Oh, yeah,
That's delicious.
good call. Gadeo, definitely one of my favorite kind of new Spanish whites for sure. Can be quite a serious wine, actually. Like, well, I would say like Burgundy level, like really interesting stuff.
And you will see white Rioja. You will see white wines from Rioja. Like I don't. It would be very. It'd be very strange not to get a very big, bold oak example. Like if you're drinking white Rioja, expect a big, bold, oaky white, more reminiscent of a Chardonnay rather than like a Californian Chardonnay rather than like every other style that kind of dominates Spain. But I'm always like, you never know. There's always a producer doing some really cool stuff in every region. So don't, it's not definitely going to be the only thing you'll drink, but know that if your first foray into Spanish wine after this session is Rioja, white Rioja, you are not going to be drinking the same wines that we've drunk today. They'll be slightly different.
I
But
mean,
also sherry as well is kind of fun as well to explore.
personally, I do truly love sherry, and there's a lot going on. And I mean, if you happen to find yourself at like, Bar Isabel or somewhere like that, like check out their sherry list for sure. You're going to find something really good. Talk to your server, whatever. They'll recommend something fantastic. And I mean,
Yeah,
if
I
you're at
agree.
Bar Isabel, you should have some of the Lopez de Heredia white wines as a sort of my platonic ideal of what like a traditional Rioja white might be like. And you can't get much better wine than that. They're fantastic.
There's there's so many I don't know. There's so many great examples, and you kind of reminding me of Bar Isabel to go there and just like ask them to take you on a journey. I don't think that's going to be far outside what they're with there. I mean, they're going to be more than happy to do it. So, but there's a lot to explore, and there's so many. I mean, I look at this map and I'm like, oh, I don't need. There's so much I've not really tasted or explored, and I mean, Portugal's right there as well. They have some beautiful white wines as well, right?
Absolutely.
There's so much for this in this peninsula to explore, and I think it's going to be like a fun few years. I think we're going to continue to see some great Spanish wine, and 2020 was an amazing vintage. So hopefully, there'll be some really great wines coming out of Europe, especially in Spain, over the next few years. But Brad's never on Instagram, but if you follow him on Instagram, feel free to just like ask him questions about Spanish wine. I don't know if I told you that before, but everyone has to answer every question my audience asks them forevermore.
Yeah, stop me on the street. I don't know. Find
Yeah,
me somewhere at Peter Pan or wherever I'm wandering around and ask me
yeah.
questions for sure.
Or follow Cochesa Imports on Instagram and like if there's some cool Spanish wine events, they're probably ones hosting it. So if you want to like dive deeper into Spain, we are, they're the people to look to. And we still have our Envenate tasting plans in the next few weeks. And Envenate is probably, in my mind, one of the first producer that kind of excited me about this kind of revival of Spanish wines. I don't want to call them New Spain. It's been this word "new" has been used way too often to describe other wine regions, and I don't think it's when you like New California. Like New California, it's not new. It's just returned to like a really older, more stable style of winemaking. It's needing it there. So I don't call it New Spain, but it is like a revival and a recognition of like a really rich history that doesn't necessarily involve new oak all the time. So we'll touch base in a few weeks, and maybe you'll all come again, and we'll taste some cool Canary Island. Oh, Canary Island! We didn't correct Canary Island.
I didn't even mention it, but those wines, as you say, are incredible. If anyone's had the chance to try a few Canary Island wines, they're amazing, and Invinite is really like pushing the front there. But they're Atlantic wines, they're volcanic wines, they're everything and more.
I don't know why did not mention Canary Islands until 7:57. Fine, we did it. We've mentioned everything. No, but there's a lot going on, and there's also an extension of Spanish wines in South America, in Central America, where there's these old varietals, like Pias is a great example, down in Chile, that was brought over by the missionaries and has been grown there for hundreds of years, that people are really rediscovering as a really delicious, delicious style of wine. And so Spain has a lot of influence in the winemaking world. It's always slightly behind Italy and France in terms of like importance, but I think it's well worth exploring. It's well worth drinking, and you're never going to be disappointed. I mean, at the end of the day, go to Spain, right? Just drink your way through Spain. Go on a pilgrimage or whatever people do nowadays.
And go to your favorite bottle shops, wherever they are. I mean, if COVID took away so much from us, but it at least gave us real wine stores. So you can go to Peter Pantry, or you can go wherever and talk to people about Spanish wine. And the LCBO is not going to have good stuff, but those shops are going to have really good stuff.
Yeah. Is there a Spain LCBO? Spanish? There isn't a Spanish LCBO. It's like West, Dundas West.
Royal York one. Yeah. I haven't been there in a long time. They have some interesting stuff sometimes. You can go check it out. Yeah.
Well, Brad, thanks for coming. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for tasting these wines. I have this much of the Ube Miraflores, and it's going to stay in my glass for a few more, like another 20 minutes. I just want to see how this evolves because I'm so curious. And thanks everyone for hanging out on this balmy Tuesday. If you haven't bought your ticket, or if you're interested, our first session on Riesling is happening on Saturday. It's a JJ Prum German tasting on Saturday at 1 p.m. And JJ Prum is one of the greatest winemakers in the world, not even for Riesling, just in general. And it's a cool opportunity, but it is going to be like, I have so much more Riesling I want to pour. I'm just so determined to pour Riesling down people's throats. I want to do German Riesling. I want to do Riesling around the world, so much. But yeah, tell me what your favorite was. Sorry, I forgot to ask. Ollie loved number 3. Harry liked number 2. Yeah, that's great. My favorite was obviously number 4. That was an obvious choice. But again, I could drink, if anyone poured any of these for me, I'd be so happy. If someone brought a bottle of this to dinner, came into my house, and they had this, I'd be so excited. So excited. These are such great wines. And all of them are around $30, and the other 2 are at $50. I've definitely poured, especially at Wine Coach, much more expensive wines that haven't delivered as well as this. But this is super fun. Yeah, great. Well, Brad, I'm going to let you go. Enjoy your evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, we'll see each other soon. If you're coming to Peter Pan, please DM me on Instagram or something so I know when you're coming, so I can come and say hello and I can chat properly. But hopefully Peter Pantry our proper retail shop will open in a few weeks, and you'll all be invited definitely to our whatever special champagne opening we do. But it'll be fun. Brad will be there, I'm sure, pouring some delicious something for us. But thank you, everyone. Have a lovely night. I will see everyone soon. and be safe and like drink lots of wine. Bye, Brad.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was amazing.
Ciao, ciao.